Most gardeners spend a fortune every spring replanting the same flowers. But what if I told you that one planting this April could fill your yard with color and life for decades? These are the fast-spreading perennials that professional landscapers quietly rely on. Plants that multiply on their own, survive harsh winters, and come back stronger every year. Stay with me, because this list will change the way you garden forever. And before we dive in, make sure you subscribe to Evergreen Garden so you never miss a video like this one. Alright, let us get into it. Here are 11 fast-spreading perennials to plant this April for a lush landscape all year round. 1. Creeping phlox. If you have ever driven past a hillside in spring covered in a thick carpet of purple and pink blooms and thought, how did someone get their yard to look like that? The answer is almost always creeping phlox. This plant is one of April's greatest secrets, and once you plant it, you will wonder how you ever gardened without it. Creeping phlox has been a staple of American cottage gardens since the 1700s. Early settlers used it to cover dry, rocky slopes where nothing else would grow. It was one of the first ornamental ground covers to earn a real reputation for toughness, and gardeners passed it from neighbor to neighbor as divisions because it spread so easily and so generously. There was no need to buy it twice. You simply divided what you had and shared the rest. Here is what the science tells us. Creeping phlox spreads by sending out long, trailing stems that root wherever they touch soil. It grows outward from the center, expanding its footprint by several inches each year, eventually forming a dense mat that crowds out weeds completely. It thrives in USDA zones 3 through 9, meaning it handles everything from the cold winters of Minnesota to the warm springs of Georgia and Texas. It prefers full sun and well-drained soil, making it perfect for slopes, rock gardens, or any area where water tends to run off quickly. Plant creeping phlox in April when the ground has warmed but summer heat has not yet arrived. Space plants about 18 inches apart and let them do the work. Within 2 or 3 seasons, you will have a solid, flowering mat that blooms brilliantly every spring and remains green and attractive all year long. Divide clumps every 3 to 4 years to keep the growth vigorous and to share extra plants with friends and neighbors. 2. Black-eyed Susan. Black-eyed Susan is one of the most recognized wildflowers in America, and yet most people do not realize just how aggressively and beautifully it will spread through a garden when given the right conditions. This golden flower is not just pretty, it has a history, a purpose, and a generosity that sets it apart from almost every other plant on this list. Native Americans used black-eyed Susan medicinally for centuries, making poultices from the roots to treat colds, swelling, and earaches. European settlers quickly adopted it as both a garden plant and a folk remedy. By the 1800s, it was appearing in gardens from New England to the Carolinas, celebrated not just for its golden blooms, but for its ability to come back year after year without any fuss. People planted it once and were rewarded for generations. Black-eyed Susan spreads 2 ways. It self-seeds prolifically, dropping dozens of seeds each fall that germinate the following spring, and its clumps expand slowly and naturally over time, filling in bare soil with more and more plants each season. It grows in USDA zones 3 through 9 and tolerates heat, drought, and poor soil, far better than most garden flowers. Research on native plantings has shown that Rudbeckia is consistently ranked among the top 5 plants for supporting native pollinators. It attracts bees, butterflies, and goldfinches that arrive in late fall to eat the seed heads right off the stem. Plant black-eyed Susans in April in a sunny spot with average to lean soil. They do not need fertilizer and actually spread more freely when the soil is not too rich. Leave the seed heads standing through winter to feed birds and allow natural self-seeding. Within a few years, what started as a small clump will become a sweeping golden display that blooms from midsummer all the way through early fall. 3. Daylilies. There is a reason daylilies are found growing along roadsides, in abandoned lots, and in the gardens of homes that have not been tended in years. These plants do not just survive, they thrive on their own, and they spread into some of the most stunning, carefree displays in all of American gardening. Daylilies were brought to North America by European settlers in the 1600s as a food source as much as a garden plant. The buds and flowers are edible, and over time, their decorative appeal took center stage. Breeders developed thousands of varieties, from pale creamy yellows to deep burgundy reds and everything in between. Daylilies spread through underground rhizomes, forming ever-expanding clumps that multiply reliably year after year. A single plant purchased this April can become a clump of 5 or 6 divisions within 3 seasons. They grow in USDA zones 3 through 10, making them one of the most adaptable flowering perennials in existence. They tolerate drought, heat, poor soil, and neglect, yet reward attentive gardeners with an even more spectacular display. Each individual flower lasts only 1 day, but a mature clump will produce hundreds of blooms over a flowering period that stretches 6 to 8 weeks or more. Plant daylilies in April in any sunny or partly shaded location. They are one of the few perennials that genuinely thrive with minimal care. Divide clumps every 3 to 4 years in early spring to keep them blooming at their best and to multiply your planting for free. Mix early, mid, and late season varieties for waves of color from June all the way through September. 4. Hostas. If your yard has areas of deep shade where nothing seems to want to grow, hostas are about to become your best gardening decision of the decade. These are the plants that turn dark, difficult corners of the garden into dramatic, textural showpieces that people stop and admire every single time. Hostas were introduced to American gardens from Japan and China in the early 1800s, where they had been cultivated for centuries as shade plants in temple gardens and around Buddhist shrines. They were prized not just for their ornamental value, but for the striking variety in their foliage. From deep blue-green to golden yellow to brilliantly variegated patterns that no other shade plant can match. They were considered living art, and that reputation has never faded. Hostas spread by slowly expanding clumps of underground crowns. A small plant placed in the ground this April will double or even triple in size within 2 to 3 seasons. They grow in USDA zones 3 through 9 and are among the most shade-tolerant plants available to American gardeners. Research on garden ecosystems has confirmed that hostas, once established, provide dense ground cover that dramatically reduces soil moisture loss and weed germination in shaded areas where lawn grass simply cannot compete. Plant hostas in April in a shaded or partially shaded area with rich, moist, well-drained soil. Give each plant more room than you think it needs, because they will fill that space and then some. Divide large clumps in spring every 4 to 5 years to multiply your collection for free. Pair large blue-leafed varieties with smaller golden ones for a layered textural display that remains beautiful from the moment they emerge in spring all the way through the first autumn frost. 5. Creeping Jenny. If you want a plant that will cover bare ground faster than almost anything else, cascade beautifully over the edges of containers and garden walls, and glow like liquid gold in the right light, Creeping Jenny is the answer. This is the plant that looks like it belongs in a magazine, but asks almost nothing of you in return. Creeping Jenny has been used in European gardens for hundreds of years, particularly in England, where it was planted along the banks of streams and ponds to control erosion. It was brought to American gardens in the colonial era and quickly earned a reputation as one of the most reliable and fastest-growing ground covers available. Wherever there was bare, damp soil, Creeping Jenny was the answer. Creeping Jenny spreads by sending out long, trailing stems that root at every node wherever they touch moist soil. It can spread several feet in a single growing season under good conditions. It grows in USDA zones 3 through 9 and thrives equally well in sun and partial shade, though the golden-leafed variety produces its most brilliant chartreuse color in full sun. It is particularly effective at stabilizing soil on slopes and softening the edges of water features, pathways, and raised beds. Plant Creeping Jenny in April along pathways, at the edges of garden beds, or in containers where it will cascade over the sides in a waterfall of golden green foliage. It prefers consistently moist soil, making it ideal near downspouts, rain gardens, or any area that receives extra water. Keep an eye on its spread and trim it back if it moves into areas where it is not wanted, because once established, this plant takes its spreading mission very seriously. 6. Coneflower. Most people know coneflower from the supplement aisle. Echinacea is one of the most studied medicinal plants in the world. But what many gardeners do not realize is that it is also one of the most generous, self-spreading perennials you can plant this April. And it is absolutely stunning in the garden from summer through fall. Echinacea was used extensively by Native American tribes across the Great Plains for centuries. The Lakota, the Cheyenne, and the Comanche all used various species medicinally, primarily for infections, pain, and as a general immune tonic. When European settlers learned of its uses, it became one of the most popular herbal remedies in 19th century America, sold in apothecaries and general stores from coast to coast. Its transition from medicine chest to garden bed was a natural one. Coneflower spreads primarily through self-seeding, dropping dozens of seeds each fall that germinate prolifically the following spring. Established clumps also slowly expand at the base over time. It grows in USDA zones 3 through 9 and is one of the most drought-tolerant flowering perennials available. Modern research has confirmed that Echinacea purpurea genuinely stimulates immune function, and its value as a garden pollinator plant is extraordinary. It supports over 50 species of native bees and serves as a primary nectar source for monarch butterflies during their fall migration. Planting coneflower is not just good gardening, it is an act of conservation. Plant coneflowers in April in a sunny spot with well-drained soil. Leave the seed heads standing through winter to feed goldfinches and other songbirds, while also allowing natural self-seeding that will fill your garden with new plants every spring. Within 3 years of a single planting, most gardeners have far more coneflowers than they started with and are happily giving divisions away to neighbors and friends. 7. Lamb's ear. There are very few plants in the gardening world that stop people in their tracks the way lamb's ear does. The leaves are so soft, so silvery, and so unexpected that visitors to your garden will reach down and touch them before they even realize what they are doing. It is one of those plants that makes a garden feel magical. Lamb's ear has been grown in monastery gardens throughout Europe since the Middle Ages, where it was valued not just ornamentally, but practically. The large, densely woolly leaves were used as natural bandages for wounds, wrapped around cuts and abrasions to absorb blood and protect against infection. Herbalists also used them as a general-purpose poultice for skin inflammation. It was considered an essential component of any proper medicinal garden, as useful as it was beautiful. Lamb's ear spreads by producing offsets around the base of the mother plant and by self-seeding moderately each season. It grows in USDA zones 4 through 8 and is exceptionally drought-tolerant once established, making it ideal for hot, dry, sunny areas where more delicate plants fail. The silvery color of the leaves is caused by thousands of tiny hairs that reflect sunlight and reduce water loss. It is a brilliant natural adaptation that also makes it one of the most visually striking foliage plants available to any gardener in any part of the country. Plant lamb's ear in April in a sunny location with well-drained or even sandy soil. It is one of the best plants for the dry, difficult areas under roof overhangs, along driveways, or in any spot where heat radiates and rainfall is limited. It spreads gradually into beautiful, soft mounds and pairs wonderfully with darker-leafed plants and brightly colored flowers for dramatic contrast that carries through all season long. 8. Yarrow. Yarrow is one of those plants that has been with human civilization so long that we sometimes forget to notice just how extraordinary it really is. And this April, it deserves a prominent place in your garden. According to Greek legend, the warrior Achilles used yarrow to stop the bleeding of his soldiers' wounds on the battlefields of Troy, which is how the plant got its scientific name, Achillea. Whether or not the legend is true, the historical use of yarrow as a wound herb is documented across cultures from ancient China to medieval Europe to Native American tribes across North America. Soldiers, explorers, and frontier settlers carried it as a basic first aid plant for centuries. It was trusted because it worked. Yarrow spreads through both underground rhizomes and prolific self-seeding, making it one of the fastest expanding perennials on this entire list. It grows in USDA zones 3 through 9 and tolerates drought, poor soil, heat, and neglect with remarkable ease. Modern research has confirmed yarrow contains compounds with genuine anti-inflammatory and mild blood clotting properties, validating its centuries of medicinal use. As a garden plant, it is a powerhouse for pollinators, attracting a wide variety of beneficial insects, including lacewings and parasitic wasps, that naturally keep garden pest populations in check. Plant yarrow in April in full sun and lean, well-drained soil. Avoid rich or heavily amended soil because it will cause the stems to flop over. Let it spread freely in wilder areas of the garden and deadhead spent flowers to reduce self-seeding in more formal beds. Divide clumps every 2 to 3 years to keep them vigorous. The flat-topped flower clusters come in white, yellow, pink, and red and make exceptional cut flowers that dry beautifully for arrangements. 9. Sedum. If you have a hot, dry, south-facing slope or a rocky area where watering is difficult and most plants simply burn up and die, sedum is the perennial you have been waiting for. This is the plant that thrives precisely where everything else gives up. Sedum, often called stone crop, has been cultivated in rock gardens and dry landscapes across Europe and Asia for centuries. In traditional Chinese and European herbal medicine, the fleshy leaves of various sedum species were used topically for burns, insect stings, and skin inflammation. In parts of Germany and Scandinavia, farmers planted sedum on the sod roofs of traditional buildings because it could survive on nothing but rainfall and still provide insulation and weather protection. Upright sedum varieties like Autumn Joy spread through slowly expanding clumps and moderate self-seeding. They grow in USDA zones 3 through 9 and are among the most drought-tolerant flowering perennials in existence, thanks to their thick, fleshy leaves that store water like a natural reservoir. Research on pollinator gardens has consistently ranked sedum among the top 10 plants for supporting late-season bees, a critical contribution since most other garden flowers have finished blooming by the time sedum reaches its magnificent peak in late summer and early fall. Plant sedum in April in the hottest, driest, most difficult spot in your garden. This is a plant that rewards neglect. Too much water or rich soil will cause the stems to flop and the plant to spread outward rather than stand upright. Divide clumps every 4 or 5 years in early spring. Leave the beautiful seed heads standing through winter to add structure, texture, and interest to the garden during the coldest months of the year. 10. Coreopsis. If you want a perennial that blooms relentlessly from late spring all the way through fall, attracts every butterfly in the neighborhood, and spreads to fill bare areas with cheerful golden color, coreopsis is one of the most underused and underappreciated plants in American gardening today. Several coreopsis species are native to North America and were used by Native American tribes as dye plants, producing warm, golden, and reddish dyes from the flowers and seeds. Early American naturalists found it growing wild from the Atlantic coast all the way to the Great Plains, a testament to its extraordinary adaptability. Coreopsis spreads through both rhizome expansion and prolific self-seeding each season. It grows in USDA zones 4 through 9, and once established, is exceptionally drought-tolerant and almost entirely low maintenance. Studies on butterfly gardens have identified coreopsis as a primary nectar source for a wide range of butterfly species, including painted ladies, skippers, and swallowtails. Regular deadheading extends the blooming period dramatically, sometimes carrying it from May all the way through October in warmer climates like those found across the South and Southwest. Plant coreopsis in April in full sun and well-drained soil. Like yarrow, it actually performs better in lean soil than in heavily amended beds. Deadhead spent flowers regularly through the season to encourage continuous blooming, but let some seed heads mature in late fall to allow natural self-seeding that will reward you with new plants every spring. Within 2 or 3 seasons, a modest planting of coreopsis will become a substantial, cheerful presence that returns reliably every year without any help from you at all. 11. Russian sage. And here we are at number 11. The plant I saved for last, because if you only add one large, dramatic perennial to your landscape this April, this should be the one. Russian sage is not just a plant, it is a statement. Russian sage is not actually from Russia. It is native to Central Asia, from Afghanistan through Pakistan and into Western China. It has been used in traditional medicine across that region for centuries as an antimicrobial and aromatic herb, with the strongly scented leaves burned as a purifying incense and used to treat skin conditions and respiratory complaints. It arrived in American gardens in the mid-20th century, and quickly became one of the most awarded and celebrated landscape plants of the last 50 years. The Perennial Plant Association named it Plant of the Year for good reason. Russian sage spreads through slowly expanding woody crowns and moderate self-seeding. It grows in USDA zones 4 through 9 and is one of the most drought-tolerant and deer-resistant perennials available to American gardeners. The silvery stems and soft lavender-blue flower spikes are produced in extraordinary abundance from midsummer all the way through fall. Research on landscape plants has confirmed that Russian sage is virtually immune to all common pests and diseases, and its powerfully aromatic foliage is so strongly scented that deer, rabbits, and groundhogs leave it completely alone. For gardeners in areas with heavy wildlife pressure across the rural South, Midwest, and Northeast, that alone makes it worth its weight in gold. Plant Russian sage in April in full sun and well-drained soil. It tolerates heat, drought, and wind better than almost any other perennial on this list. Cut it back hard each spring, within a few inches of the ground, to encourage full, bushy new growth. Within 2 to 3 seasons, a single plant will develop into a stunning 3-foot-wide cloud of silver and lavender that provides breathtaking color and structure from July through the first hard freeze of autumn. There you have it, 11 fast-spreading perennials to plant this April and enjoy for decades. From the golden carpet of creeping jenny to the silver spires of Russian sage, these plants come back every year, spread on their own, and fill your landscape with color and life without demanding constant effort. Plant the right plants once and let nature do the rest. If this video gave you ideas for your April planting, hit that like button and drop a comment below telling me which one you are most excited to try. I read every single one. And if you have not yet subscribed to Evergreen Garden, now is the time. We post new videos every week with practical advice for growing a beautiful garden at any age. We will see you in the next one.